The rancher saw the truth everyone ignored. Please, just look. The pregnant orc woman lay beside Calder Rowan's fence, one powerful arm locked around her swollen belly, while freezing rain carried blood into the grass. Her other hand pointed toward his open barn. Hoofbeats rolled across the distant hills. Calder dropped his feed sack and ran to her. His patched coat, worn boots, and calloused hands marked him as an ordinary rancher, yet he knelt beside the towering stranger before fear could stop him. A silver crest hung beneath her torn leather collar. She hid it when she noticed him staring. Then something moved inside the barn. A small human shape lay beneath the orcs. Cloak, Calder looked from the blood on her hands to the unconscious child. He did not know whether he had found a rescuer, a killer, or the woman whose death could set 2 nations on fire. Before we continue, tell us in the comments where you are watching from and whether you would have opened your door for Maela that night. Subscribe to Orc Saga and stay with us as one wounded queen, one ordinary rancher, and one hidden truth begin changing 2 worlds. The barn door struck the outer wall each time the wind swept through Calder's yard. Inside, Calder's grey mare kicked at her stall. Her broken saddle lay in the mud, one stirrup torn loose. The saddle belonged to a child. Near the loft stairs, a dark cloak covered a small body. Calder pulled it aside. Elin Ward, the miller's 9-year-old daughter, lay unconscious beneath it. Her dress was wet and blood-stained. One ankle had been secured between 2 wooden splints with strips. Of fine red cloth, Calder checked her throat, a weak pulse. Entered his fingers. The orc woman appeared in the doorway behind him. She stood nearly a head taller than Calder and twice as broad through the shoulders. Wet black hair clung to a face made fierce by 2 small white tusks. Torn leather armor covered her body, but the damaged pieces could not hide the disciplined strength beneath them. Her left hand gripped the doorway. Her right protected the heavy curve of her belly. Calder moved between her and Elin. The orc noticed. Immediately, her amber eyes hardened. She explained in controlled, formal speech that the girl had fallen into the eastern ravine. Calder asked whether she had pushed her. For one breath. The woman looked capable of breaking his neck. Then pain crossed her face. She leaned against the doorway and said that if she had wanted the child dead, she would not have carried her 3 miles through freezing rain. Calder looked again at Elin's blood-stained dress. He asked whose blood covered it. The orc looked down at the wound beneath her. Ribs, she did not answer. The hoofbeats drew closer. Human men shouted Calder's name from the road. The orc reached for the long black knife tied to her thigh. Calder raised his feeding shovel. He told her that if she reached for the weapon again, he would leave her outside. The woman said human courage often arrived only when humans believed someone weaker stood before them. Calder replied that she was larger, armed and insulting him inside his own barn. Nothing about her appeared weak. Something unexpected moved in her. Expression, not amusement recognition. The child groaned beneath the cloak. Calder lifted Elin. He began carrying her toward the cottage, then heard the orc collapse behind him. He stopped in the rain. He could take Elin inside, lock the door and wait for the villagers. That would be the safe decision. At 21, Calder had once made the safe decision. 3 men had held him on a riverbank, while his younger brother Soren disappeared beneath floodwater. Calder had stopped fighting their grip seconds before the roof beneath Soren broke apart. Everyone said he could not have saved him. Calder still heard Soren calling during storms. He returned to the orc. She tried to push away his help. Calder pulled her arm across his shoulders anyway. Her weight nearly drove him to his knees. She smelled of rain, leather, smoke, and blood. Her body was hot despite the cold. The contrast made Calder realize how close she was to fever. They crossed the yard together. His cottage stood beneath 2 bent cedar trees. The roof had been repaired with scrap boards. Water dripped into a bucket beside the stove. His pantry held oats, 3 onions, dried apples, and half a loaf of bread. The home was poor, but clean. Calder placed Elin on the narrow bed. The orc remained near the door, inspecting every window, knife and shadow. Her movements revealed military training. Even injured, she measured distances as though preparing to defend the room. Calder asked her name. She said, "Maela, only Maela." He offered a cup of water. She smelled it first. Calder drank before handing it back. Maela watched his throat move as he swallowed. Then she drank. At first she tried to remain controlled. Need soon overcame dignity. Water ran over her lower lip and along one. Tuscot Calder turned away and pretended to adjust the stove. Maela noticed the kindness. She also noticed that his hands were shaking. He was afraid of her. He simply refused to let fear decide his actions. Calder removed his only dry blanket from a chest and wrapped it around her shoulders. Maela caught his wrist. Her hand almost covered his forearm. Her palm was burning. Calder became aware of how little distance remained between them. Maela looked down at him, her breath touching his forehead. Pain had softened her control, but strength still filled every line of her body. Their eyes held. Something unfamiliar passed between them. Not trust, no attraction yet, only the awareness that each had the power to hurt the other in a different way. Fist struck the cottage door. Bran Ward shouted for his daughter. Calder stepped. Outside, 8 men waited in the rain. Bran carried a wood axe. His wife stood near the fence, crying. Behind them sat Magistrate Vale on a dark horse. Vale had governed Greyfield for 15 years. He settled disputes quietly, collected taxes politely, and removed families from their land with an expression of regret. People trusted him because he rarely raised his voice. Calder had never trusted a man who could destroy a home while sounding compassionate. Vale asked whether the orc was inside. Calder said she was. Bran tried to push past him. Calder blocked the door. He explained that Elin was alive but unconscious. No one would enter with a raised weapon. Vale reminded him that the ranch taxes were overdue. The word sounded like concern. The threat beneath them was clear. Vale said Calder had already made enough costly decisions in his life. Calder understood the reference to Soren. Anger rose so quickly that he nearly dragged Vale from the horse. Instead, he stepped closer and told the magistrate that debt did not give him ownership of Calder's doorway. Vale smiled. Only his eyes changed. Before he could answer, Elin screamed inside. Calder turned. Maela stood over the bed while the girl convulsed. Bran and his wife rushed inside. Maela ordered Calder to bring warm water, salt and honey. Her voice carried the force of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Calder obeyed before wondering why. Maela turned Elin onto her side. Dark river water spilled from the girl's mouth. Elin opened her eyes. She saw the green woman leaning above. Her terror twisted her face. She called Maela a monster. Bran pulled his daughter away. Outside, Vale said the child had given them the truth. Calder looked at Elin, then at the splints around her ankle. The red cloth matched Maela's torn undershirt. The blood on Elin's dress had been smeared from the outside. Maela might have rescued the girl. She might also have caused the fall, and then tried to keep Elin alive. Calder did not. No. Vale offered what he called a fair solution. Maela could remain beneath Calder's supervision until Elin recovered enough to speak. If the orc escaped or another person was harmed, Calder would lose the ranch. The arrangement sounded merciful. It placed every danger on Calder. Vale rode away before sunrise. Maela watched him through the window, her fingers closed around the hidden silver crest beneath her clothes. When the villagers left, Calder demanded the full truth. Maela repeated that the child had fallen. Calder told her half an answer. Would not protect either of them. Maela said trust was not owed to a stranger. Calder replied that shelter was not owed either. The words landed harder than he intended. Maela removed his blanket from her shoulders. She folded it carefully and placed it on the bed. Then she walked toward the door. Blood ran down her leg. Calder blocked her path. She told him to move. He said dying outside would not make her independent Maela. Stepped closer, even wounded. She filled the space around him. Her height forced Calder to lift his chin. Her anger carried heat. For an instant he thought she might strike him. Instead, her knees weakened. Calder caught her round the waist, her body pressed against his. The solid curve of her belly rested between them, and something shifted beneath it. The unborn child kicked once against Calder's ribs. Both froze. Maela looked down at him. Calder kept one arm around her back and the other near her side. Her breathing had become shallow. Wet hair touched his cheek. Neither moved immediately. Then Maela pulled away. Calder helped her sit. He loosened the leather around her wound and found a deep spear cut beneath her ribs. A dark bruise spread around the lower side of her belly. He asked when the child had last moved strongly. Maela avoided his eyes, Calder asked again. She admitted the movement had become weaker. Since the ravine, fear entered her voice. Calder. New cattle births, horse injuries, and enough human medicine to recognize danger. He did not understand orc pregnancy, but blood loss and stress respected no species. He placed his palm near the bruise. Maela caught his wrist. Calder stopped. She studied his face, as though deciding whether touch could be trusted. Then she guided his hand lower. They waited. Nothing moved. Maela stopped breathing. Calder kept his palm steady. At last, a small pressure pushed against his skin. Relief crossed. Maela's face so openly that Calder had to look away. Her hand remained around his wrist. The contact lasted too long to be accidental. Before either addressed it, a shadow moved past the window. Calder went outside. A dead fox hung from the porch beam. Its throat had been cut. An orc execution mark had been carved beneath it. Maela became pale beneath her green skin. She said the symbol warned. Traitors that their blood had already been claimed. Calder examined the carving. The shape was correct. The cuts were... Not someone had copied the symbol without understanding how orc blades formed the lines. Rider in a grey cloak disappeared. Beyond the pasture, Calder started after him. Maela caught his arm. Her grip was hard, but fear lived beneath it. She told him pursuit was what the rider wanted. Calder asked who wanted her dead. Maela said too many people would benefit. That evening, Bran returned with the village healer. An elderly woman named Hessa entered. Reluctantly, she examined Maela's wound but refused to touch her belly until Calder threatened to tell the entire village that its healer had abandoned a pregnant woman. Hessa finally listened, for the child's heartbeat through a wooden horn. Her face became serious. She warned Maela that blood loss, fear, riding, or combat could force an early birth. If that happened before the child turned properly, both might die. Maela asked how long she needed to rest. Hessa said at least 2 weeks. Maela laughed once without humor. She clearly did not believe she possessed 2 quiet weeks. Before leaving, Hessa washed her hands outside in the snow, as though Maela's skin carried disease. Calder saw Maela watching. She said nothing. That silence revealed more than anger would have. During the first 3 days, Calder and Maela remained wary. He cleaned her wound each morning. She watched his hands. He cooked because she needed strength. She ate because the unborn child depended upon it. At night, Calder slept beside the stove while Maela took the bed. On the second night, thunder rolled across the fields. Maela spoke in her sleep. She whispered to the child in the orc language. Her voice shifted between command and pleading. She promised the baby that mountain flowers would bloom beside the southern wall. Then she spoke the name Torvak. Her hand slipped from the bed. Calder reached to return it. Beneath the blanket, her fingers closed around. As she woke slowly, for several breaths, they remained hand in hand. Maela did not release him. Calder felt the difference in their hands. Hers was broad and powerful, marked by old weapon scars. His was narrower, rough from rope and tools. He wondered what her hands had commanded. Maela wondered how hands so ordinary had become the first place she had felt safe in months. The next morning, neither mentioned it, Calder cooked oat porridge. with dried apples. Maela examined the bowl with clear suspicion. He asked whether orcs ate iron for breakfast. She said strong orcs ate meat. Calder said strong orcs were currently eating oats because the pantry contained no mountain boar. Maela tasted it. Her expression became deeply offended. Calder laughed. Maela tried not to. A sparrow entered through a gap in the roof, stole a strip of apple, and flew directly into Calder's flour sack. When he tried to catch it, the sack fell over his head. Maela's laugh filled the cottage. The sound changed her face. Calder removed the sack and stared. She covered her mouth too. Late, that became the first moment he saw the woman. Beneath her discipline, as her strength returned, she helped around the ranch. Calder asked her to carry a small bundle of firewood. She returned with an entire fallen trunk across one shoulder. He stared. Maela dropped it beside the chopping block and said he had asked for wood. Calder told her most people understood limits. She replied that most people looked small from her height. Their arguments became less hostile and more personal. She taught him orc words. Ker meant duty accepted. Freely Dramak meant standing between danger and another person. Vea meant the place where someone could remove weapons without fear. Calder mispronounced Vea 3 times. On the 4th attempt, Maela looked at him differently. No human had ever spoken the word to her. Calder only knew the cottage had suddenly become too quiet. On the 5th day, Elin developed a fever. Magistrate Vale sent word that the child remembered a white horse and a man near the ravine, but the fever had confused her. Calder became restless. Maela advised patience. Calder wanted evidence that would clear her before the villagers attacked. He made a serious mistake. He took Maela's hidden silver crest to Vale's. Maela had fallen asleep after the healer gave her pain tea. Calder found the crest near her folded clothes. He believed Vale might identify the clan and send word to someone who could protect her. Vale examined the symbol. He said it belonged to a minor military house. He promised to contact a neutral border trader. Calder returned the crest before Maela woke. He did not tell her what he had done. That choice opened the road to every danger that followed. Vale sent a rider north before sunset. Days passed. The expected attack did not come. Calder began believing his decision had been wise. Maela's wound improved. Their trust grew slowly, through routines rather than sudden declarations. She fed the cattle while he repaired the western fence. He showed her how to brush the grey mare without frightening it. She taught him how orc warriors tied protection cords around the wrist before travel. One afternoon, Calder found Maela sitting inside the empty foaling stall. She was speaking softly to the unborn child. She described Torvak. Her dead husband had hated boiled roots, laughed during storms, and believed every dispute could be settled by racing horses. Maela promised the child would know him. Her voice broke. Calder stepped away before she saw him. That night, Maela asked why he kept an old rope above the stove. Calder told her about Soren. He described the flood and the moment he stopped fighting the men who held him. Maela said survival often felt like betrayal to the person left alive. Calder asked whether that was how she felt about Torvak. She nodded for the first time. She spoke honestly about her past. Torvak had not been the love of her youth. Their marriage had been arranged between powerful houses. Respect had grown slowly. Affection came later. He had died protecting her during an ambush. Maela carried guilt because one part of her had been relieved when political duty ended with his death. She had loved him, but she had also wanted a life that belonged to her. Calder admitted something he had told no one. He had never wanted to inherit the ranch. As a boy, he wanted to build bridges. He used to draw them in the dirt and imagine roads crossing places people believed impassable. After Soren died, Calder stayed because leaving felt like abandoning the family twice. Maela studied him. She said he had become a bridge builder after all. Calder asked what she had wanted before duty chose for. Maela answered that she once wanted to breed mountain horses. The simplicity surprised him. They imagined a life neither believed possible. A ranch beneath the mountains, human cattle beside orc war, horses, children who knew both languages. The image became intimate, because both understood it might never exist. Maela's gaze lowered to Calder's mouth. His eyes moved over the line of her neck, the curve of her shoulder, and the strength beneath the loose shirt he had altered for her. Desire entered the room. Quietly, it frightened Calder more than her knife had. Maela noticed his attention. She did not cover herself or retreat. Orc culture treated physical admiration with directness. Human custom demanded concealment. Calder looked away. Maela asked whether he found her unpleasant. His face warmed. He said, unpleasantness was not the problem. She understood. The silence became charged. Maela moved closer. Because of the height difference, Calder had to look up. She lifted one hand and brushed a loose strand of hair from his forehead. Her fingers lingered near his temple. Calder placed a hand against her waist. The contact was careful, but the heat beneath her clothing changed his breathing. Maela's eyes darkened. For one suspended moment, neither was queen, rancher, human, or orc. They were simply too lonely. People aware of each other. Then the child moved. Sharply, Maela pulled back. The desire between them did not vanish. It became something they carried silently. Elin returned on the 9th day. She used 2 rough crutches. Bran walked beside her. Vale followed on horseback. The villagers gathered near. Calder's fence. Some carried tools that could become weapons. A boy threw a stone toward Maela. It struck the wall beside her head. Calder crossed the yard and seized the boys. Father by the coat. The father called Calder an orc lover and spat near his boots. Calder nearly struck him. Maela stopped him with one hand against his chest. The gesture looked protective. It also reminded everyone that she could overpower Calder easily. Vale encouraged Elin to speak. He asked whether she remembered the monster carrying a blade. Elin nodded. Maela always carried a blade. Vale asked whether Maela had pushed her into the ravine. Elin became confused. Calder accused Vale of shaping the answers. Vale said he was helping a frightened child. Elin looked toward the barn. She asked where the white horse was. Bran said her pony had been brown. Elin insisted a white horse had stood beside the eastern road. A man in a grey cloak had told her a lamb was trapped below. She climbed down. The ground collapsed when she woke. The grey-cloaked man stood above the ravine. He did not help. Maela did. The orc moved rocks from Elin's ankle, tied the splints and carried her toward Greyfield. Then villagers attacked. Elin remembered Maela turning her body to shield her from a spear. The blood belonged to Maela. Elin crossed the yard. She held out a small wooden horse Calder had carved years earlier. She said Maela needed something gentle to protect. Maela knelt with difficulty. Elin touched Maela's forehead. Maela returned the gesture. Bran lowered his axe. Calder looked at Vale. The magistrate expressed relief. Then Elin noticed the brass fastener on Vale's cloak. Her face changed. She whispered that the rider near the ravine had worn the same mark. The villagers turned. Vale smiled patiently. He explained that many officials used similar fasteners. Calder wanted to accuse him. Vale reminded everyone that a feverish child's memory could not outweigh years of public service. Some villagers agreed. That was how power protected itself, not through innocence, through familiarity. Vale rode away before anyone could stop him. That evening, Calder told Maela about the crest. He admitted taking it to Vale. Maela became completely still. She asked when. Calder answered. Her face drained. She explained that the crest did not belong to a minor military family. It was the private seal of Kaza's ruling bloodline. Calder understood immediately. He had revealed her location. The rider in grey had not found them by accident. Maela's voice became cold. She told Calder that his need to fix everything had endangered her child. Calder defended himself at first. He said she had hidden the truth. Maela answered that ignorance did not excuse acting without permission. Calder's pride broke. He had repeated the exact wrong he once accused her of committing. He had chosen what she was allowed to risk. The consequence arrived before he could apologize. Orc war horns sounded beyond the hills. 30 mounted orcs descended toward the ranch. At their front rode General Rhadek. He was broad, handsome by orc standards, and dressed in polished black armor. He carried himself with the confidence of a warrior admired by other warriors. Rhadek dismounted and dropped to one knee. Every soldier behind him followed. He addressed Maela as Mountain Queen, keeper of the 7 spears, and ruler of Karza. Calder felt the truth strike him. Maela had not merely belonged to the royal house, she ruled it. Rhadek behaved with perfect respect. He thanked Calder for protecting his queen and unborn heir. He ordered his warriors to lower their weapons near human land. He paid Bran for Elin's damaged crutches. Nothing about him appeared cruel. That made Calder distrust him more. Rhadek's attention remained fixed on Maela, not only with political concern. His eyes moved over the borrowed shirt, the shape of her pregnancy, and the exposed line of her neck where the armor had torn. Possession lived in his gaze. Maela noticed and became colder. Years earlier, after Torvak's death, Rhadek had offered marriage. He claimed the union would stabilize Karza. Maela had refused. Rhadek had accepted it publicly. Privately, his desire had become an obsession. He admired Maela's strength, but he wanted to own it. He wanted the woman, the crown, and the satisfaction of turning her refusal into surrender. His lust was not tenderness. It was an appetite mixed with wounded pride. Rhadek entered Calder's cottage. He noticed the joined blankets, Maela's altered shirt, and the protection cord tied around Calder's wrist. He asked Maela whether the rancher had touched her wound. The question sounded medical. The anger beneath it was personal. Maela said Calder had kept both her and the child alive. Rhadek looked at Calder with polite contempt. He reported that Blackridge stood near the civil war. Several clans believed Maela dead. Human armies were gathering at the border after rumors of an orc attack on Greyfield. If Maela did not return within 3 days, Rhadek claimed thousands would die. Maela had to leave. Inside the cottage, Calder packed her repaired cloak. He asked why she had hidden everything. Maela said she wanted one person to see her before seeing the throne. Calder answered that she had tested his honesty while hiding her own. Maela accused him of exposing her crest without permission. He had no defense. Calder admitted the mistake. He said fear of losing control had made him seek help from the wrong man. Maela said his mistake might kill guards who came for her. Calder's guilt became anger. He asked whether the woman beside his stove had ever trusted him. Maela replied that trust had begun. He had broken it. Calder looked at Rhadek waiting outside, powerful and familiar with every part of Maela's world. Jealousy entered him. He hated it. Rhadek belonged beside her politically. Calder owned 11 cattle and a leaking roof. He asked whether Rhadek had once been her lover. Maela's expression sharpened. She said Rhadek had wanted her. Calder asked whether she had wanted him. The question was unfair. Maela heard the insecurity beneath it and the accusation above it. She told Calder that desire was not the same as choice. Calder answered that he no longer knew what she had chosen. Pain entered her face. He immediately regretted the words. Then Rhadek called from outside. Maela folded Calder's blanket and left it on the bed. Before walking away, she said everyone else looked at her crown. Calder had once looked at her wound. Now he was looking at his own fear. Rhadek's column camped near Crow Pass. Magistrate Vale arrived after dark. Elin had hidden beneath his supply wagon. She wanted proof adults could not dismiss. From beneath. "The canvas," she heard Vale ask whether Maela had recognized him near the ravine. Rhadek said she had seen only the cloak. Vale asked whether the child should have died. Rhadek said a dead human child would have created anger, but a living frightened witness created confusion. Confusion lasted longer and could be shaped. Vale's voice shook. For a moment he appeared trapped. He claimed Rhadek had forced him to cooperate by threatening Greyfield. Rhadek reminded him that no orc army had threatened the village until Vale accepted the agreement. Vale's fear disappeared. He asked whether the river road and northern farmland would still belong to him after the war. Rhadek promised both. Vale had not been forced. He had chosen profit. Their plan reached beyond killing Maela. Rhadek would declare that humans assassinated the queen. Orc clans would unite beneath his command and cross the border. Vale would claim orcs attacked first. Human lords would send soldiers north. Each man would gain power from the war. Vale asked what would happen to Maela if Rhadek captured her alive. Rhadek answered that she would marry him publicly and surrender authority. Vale asked whether Maela would agree. Rhadek said refusal had once excited him. Now it only delayed what belonged to him. The words revealed the ugliest part of his desire. He did not merely want Maela dead. He wanted her defeated, dependent, and forced to stand beside him while everyone watched. Vale asked about the unborn daughter. Rhadek's voice became cold. The child could inherit. The child must not survive. Elin covered her mouth. The wagon shifted. A guard heard her. Elin escaped beneath the horses and ran into the forest. By dawn, she reached Calder's ranch. She found him sitting beside the cold stove. Calder had spent the night staring at Maela's empty cup. Elin told him everything. Calder saddled the grey mare immediately. Bran tried to stop him. Calder said Maela might never forgive him. Elin handed him the wooden horse. She said saving someone did not require being forgiven first. Calder rode north. If Calder's mistake had placed someone you loved in danger, would you still trust him enough to return? Share your answer in the comments and subscribe to the Orc. Von Saga, because the most dangerous part of Rhadek's plan is still ahead. Rhadek struck before reaching Blackridge. He ordered Maela's loyal guards disarmed. Captain Dura resisted. The road became a battlefield. Maela drew her sword. Hessa's warning returned to her. Every blow could force an early birth. Every step could kill the child. Still, Maela fought. Rhadek watched her with admiration and hunger. He loved her power most when he imagined breaking it. After Maela's third strike, pain tore through her abdomen. Blood appeared beneath her armor. She froze. The child inside her did not move. Rhadek placed a blade against Dura's throat. He ordered Maela to surrender. Maela dropped her sword. Rhadek chained her hands. He stepped close enough that his armor touched hers. He told her Calder had made his usefulness clear by exposing the crest. Maela said Calder's mistake did not make Rhadek less of a traitor. Rhadek touched one finger beneath her chin. Maela recoiled. He told her she had once chosen a dead husband, then a human farmer, when the strongest man in Kaza had waited for her. Maela answered that strength without restraint was only hunger. Rhadek smiled. He said hunger had built kingdoms. Captain Dura was left wounded beside the road. Calder found her hours later. He bound her injury and placed her on his mare. Dura told him the council would meet by sunset. At dawn, human militia would advance from Greyfield. At the same hour, Rhadek's eastern army would cross the border. If Calder failed before nightfall, war would begin. Dura also told him Maela had begun bleeding after fighting. Calder understood the full consequence of taking the crest to Vale. His mistake had not simply revealed her location. It had killed loyal guards, placed Maela in chains, and endangered the child. For several minutes, Calder could not move. Dura told him guilt could wait until after action. The words sounded like something Maela would have said. They entered Blackridge through an old livestock tunnel. Blackridge Hold rose through the mountain in layers of stone bridges, iron gates, and crowded terraces. Calder felt smaller with every step. Orc children stared at him. Some hid behind their parents. A merchant refused to sell him water. A guard called him soft blood. Inside the council hall, Maela stood in chains. Rhadek carried the mountain crown beneath one arm. Vale stood beside him in grey robes. He described an orc attack on Greyfield and claimed Calder had been bewitched. Rhadek spoke with sorrow and said pregnancy had weakened Maela's judgment. Their lie worked because it contained truth. Maela was grieving. She was pregnant. She had fallen in love with a human. Calder entered carrying Elin's wooden horse. The hall erupted. Rhadek smiled. He had expected Calder. He asked whether Calder loved Maela after knowing her less than 2 weeks. Calder could deny it. A denial might make him appear reasonable. Maela looked at him. Calder remembered her hand in his during thunder, her laughter over porridge, the heat of her body against his, and the pain on her face when he questioned her choices. He said he loved her. The hall filled with outrage. Rhadek called the confession proof of manipulation. Calder admitted something else. He had taken the royal crest to Vale. His mistake had exposed Maela. Rhadek attempted to use the confession against him. Calder refused to hide. He told the council that love did not make him wise. Fear had made him act without Maela's permission. People had died because of it. Maela stared at him. Calder did not ask for forgiveness. He only gave the truth. Then he held up the wooden horse. He said everyone was looking at the Queen's crown and the humans' failure. No one was looking at the child used to begin the war. Please, just look. Elin entered behind him. Bran and 20 Greyfield villagers followed. They had captured Vale's riders. Captain Dura presented the false orc markings. Elin repeated the conversation she overheard. Vale denied everything. Then one of his own men confessed. Vale claimed Rhadek had forced him. Elin described the promised land and river road. Vale's final disguise collapsed. The elders turned toward Rhadek. Rhadek did not surrender. He drew his sword. The hall became a battlefield. Loyal guards moved to free Maela. Rhadek's faction sealed the doors. Vale fled toward the lower passage carrying a torch. Elin followed. Calder chased them. Vale caught the girl near the birthing chambers and pressed a knife against her throat. He said everything had begun because Calder could not ignore one wounded orc. Calder answered that everything had begun because Vale believed no one would examine the convenient story. Elin bit Vale's hand. Calder rushed forward. Vale dropped the torch. Flames spread across the wooden walkway. Below, Maela cried out. The stress and blood loss had forced labor to begin, too early. Rhadek heard the healers shouting. He moved toward the chamber with his sword. The unborn daughter remained the final threat to his claim. Calder stood between him and the door. Rhadek laughed at the thin rancher holding a broken spear. He told Calder that Maela desired strength even when she pretended otherwise. Calder said Rhadek had never understood the difference between being desired and being chosen. Rhadek attacked. The first blow broke the spear. The second struck Calder's shoulder. Rhadek raised his sword again. Calder saw the grain mechanism above the terrace. He threw Elin's wooden horse toward Rhadek's face. Rhadek turned instinctively. Calder pulled the emergency release. Hundreds of grain sacks dropped between them. Rhadek disappeared beneath timber and wheat. Calder entered the birthing chamber. Maela lay surrounded by healers. Blood covered the blankets. The child had turned sideways. The lead healer said stress had weakened both heartbeats. They could save Maela or attempt to save the baby, likely not both. Maela ordered them to save her daughter. Calder refused. Maela said Kaza needed an heir to stop the war. Calder took her face between his hands. He told her everyone had always looked at what she could carry for them, the crown, the bloodline, the army. He asked her to look at what he saw, a woman whose life mattered without a throne, a mother her daughter deserved to know, a person who did not have to die to prove strength. The healers insisted no third choice existed. Calder remembered the mare whose foal had turned after warmth and movement. He remembered the night Maela's child stopped moving. He asked for blankets, rope, heated stones, and 2 strong guards. Maela ordered the healers to obey. They raised one side of her body inside a sling, while Calder placed warmth along the opposite side. He guided her breathing. Maela screamed. Calder nearly stopped. She gripped his hand. He told her to look at him. She did. The child shifted. The healers moved quickly. A small cry filled the chamber. The baby girl was born alive. Maela reached for her. Then Maela's eyes closed. Her heartbeat weakened. Calder called her name. No answer. He pressed his forehead to hers. Please, just look. Maela's fingers moved against his hand. Her eyes opened. The second heartbeat returned. Rhadek survived. The council stripped him of rank and sent him to the northern fortress. Vale returned to Greyfield for judgment. Messengers reached both armies before dawn. War stopped, with soldiers already facing one another across the river. Thousands survived. Maela recovered slowly. Calder remained beside her for 7 days. He fed the baby goat milk when Maela slept. He learned to wrap the child in the stone spear. Style, though his first attempt left one tiny green arm free. Maela laughed weakly. Their desire returned before either trusted it. Calder felt it when Maela's bare shoulder touched his hand during bandage changes. Maela felt it when he lifted the sleeping baby from her chest and leaned close enough that his breath warmed her neck. Neither acted immediately. They had learned that wanting someone did not erase hurt. One evening, Maela asked Calder why he had questioned whether she wanted Rhadek. Calder admitted jealousy. He said Rhadek belonged to her world in ways Calder never could. Maela told him Rhadek had wanted to possess her because refusal injured his pride. Calder had wanted her to remain free even when freedom might take her away. That was the difference. Calder apologized for exposing the Crest and for judging her through his insecurity. Maela apologized for hiding the truth after trust had begun. Calder said he did not expect forgiveness. Maela answered that forgiveness was not a gift given once. It was a road rebuilt through repeated choices. Weeks later, Calder returned to the ranch. He believed Maela needed space to rule without being watched by a human stranger. The separation lasted 12 days. Those days deepened what proximity had begun. Calder missed the sound of her footsteps. Maela missed the man who looked at her before kneeling to the crown. When she arrived at the ranch, she came without a royal column. Only Captain Dura and the baby travelled with her. Calder stood beside the repaired fence. Maela crossed the yard. For a moment, neither spoke. Then she told him that everyone at Blackridge had an opinion about what she should do. She wanted to know what he wanted. Calder said he wanted her. The honesty changed her face. He added that desire alone was not enough. He wanted the arguments, responsibilities, fear, and work required to remain beside her. Maela stepped closer. She took his hand and placed it at her waist. Calder looked up at her. Her amber eyes had darkened. This time, neither retreated from the physical truth between them. Their kiss began slowly. Maela bent toward him. Calder's fingers tightened against her side. Her hand moved into his hair and held him with controlled strength. The kiss carried weeks of restraint, jealousy, fear, and relief. It remained tender. It was not innocent. When they separated, Calder's breathing had changed. Maela rested her forehead against his. She said she wanted him as a man, not as a rescuer. Calder answered that he wanted her as a woman, not as a queen. Then she made her offer. The council gathered 1 month later. Maela entered wearing the mountain crown. Her daughter rested in Captain Dura's arms. Calder stood near the wall in a clean but plainly mended shirt. Before elders, warriors, and human witnesses, Maela offered him land, gold, and protection. Calder refused. The hall stirred. He explained that payment would turn love into debt. Maela removed an iron ring from her braid. She asked him to marry her, not as a reward, not as a servant, not as a symbol for peace, as the man she wanted beside her when the hall emptied and the crown became heavy. Calder looked at the elders who despised him. He thought of his ranch and the life he understood. He also thought of Maela's laughter, anger, body, courage and fear. He accepted the ring. He said he did not want her kingdom. He wanted Vale, a home where both could remove their weapons without fear. Maela bent toward him. Their public kiss was awkward because of height, tusks, and a baby beginning to cry between them. It was also chosen freely. Marriage did not end prejudice. It made prejudice public. 3 clan elders resigned. A rival chieftain closed the eastern trade route. Human merchants refused to sell Calder food when he returned to Greyfield. A priest denied their daughter a human blessing. An orc healer ordered Calder from the room before treating Maela. Children threw stones at Maela's carriage. Orc warriors placed a child-sized chair for Calder during council and laughed when he entered. Calder did not always respond wisely. Once he struck a warrior who called his daughter impure. The fight damaged a fragile alliance. Maela was furious. Calder accused her of caring more about politics than dignity. Maela said anger could defend pride while destroying the people pride claimed to protect. They spent 3 nights apart. Then Calder apologized publicly to the warrior he struck, while refusing to apologize for defending his daughter. Maela forced the council to establish legal protection for mixed families. Both paid a price. Calder and Maela built a neutral market on the ranch. Human farmers brought flour, wool and tools. Orc caravans brought iron, salt and medicine. The first market nearly failed. Then Elin arrived carrying the wooden horse. She stood before the villagers and asked them to look at Maela's scar. The scar had come from a human spear. Maela accepted while shielding her. Bran opened his flower wagon, others followed. Change arrived. Slowly, not as a celebration, as people choose one by one to examine what fear told them to ignore. Years passed. Calder and Maela raised their daughter between both worlds. They named her Sela, meaning a bridge built by willing hands. She inherited Maela's green skin, Calder's grey eyes, and the stubbornness of both. Elin became her closest friend. One autumn evening, Calder repaired the same fence where he had found Maela bleeding. Maela sat nearby with the crown resting beside her. Instead of on her head, a rider appeared on the northern road. The horse stumbled. Young orc fell beside the fence. Calder reached for his knife. Maela stood. The stranger wore the broken mountain mark once used by Rhadek's personal guard. Hatred tightened every face in the yard. The young orc could have been an assassin. Sela reached him first. She found a sealed warning beneath his armor. He was Rhadek's son, a child Maela had never known existed. He had crossed the mountains to warn them that Rhadek's remaining followers planned to poison the border wells. Calder stared at the family. Mark, Maela stared at the son of the man who had desired, betrayed, and nearly destroyed her. For one dangerous moment, Old Pain offered the easy answer. Leave him, bind him, judge him by the blood he carried. Sela took Maela's hand. Then she pointed toward the wound hidden beneath the young orc's armor. Please, just look. The words returned. Everything, freezing rain, Elin beneath the cloak. Calder's doubt, Maela's blood. The first time one person chose evidence over hatred. Maela knelt beside Rhadek's son. Calder opened the gate. Elin ran for bandages. The young orc looked at them, unable to understand why the people his father had tried to destroy were saving him. Calder understood. Years earlier, Maela had begged him to see the truth everyone ignored. Later, he had asked a council to do the same. Now their daughter carried that courage without knowing how rare it had once been. Their world had not changed because love erased difference, desire, jealousy, or fear. It changed because love demanded that they examine those things. Honestly, Maela reached for Calder's hand. The queen who once hid her crown held the rancher who once believed himself powerless. Their fingers fit together with the ease of years behind them. Human tools hung beside orc weapons inside the barn. Ahead waited another danger and another chance to prevent hatred from becoming inheritance. There would always be people who saw only monsters. There would always be people who confused lust with love and possession with devotion. There would always be people who saw only crowns, poverty, bloodlines, or scars. But as long as someone was willing to stop before striking, look beneath the easy story, and see the person standing there. Fear would not have the final word. It had begun with a wounded queen beside a broken fence. It continued with the son of her enemy lying in the same grass. And once again, before the world could choose violence, a child asked them to see the truth. Would you have saved Rhadek's wounded son after everything his father had done to Calder, Maela, and their child? Share your answer in the comments, subscribe to Orc Saga, and turn on notifications for more emotional human-orc stories where kindness challenges fear and two different worlds find one heart.